Alright everybody, hello and welcome back to A&J Gaming. This is your host, Andrew. Today I wanted to get into something that I haven't done ever, and that is an EDH deck tech. Now, unlike most deck techs that I've seen, whereas most people are going to go through the entire library, I've picked out about 20 cards, so you can see that's a heck of a difference there, to go through to show you what really makes the deck tick, just so I'm not trying to, say, hey, net deck this if you want to win, because I don't always win with it, but I always have fun with it, and I do have a pretty good win record with it. Now, the general for the deck, or commander, whatever you guys want to call it, I use some odd terminology because I've played with several different play groups, ranging from people who've played since the game came out to people who just picked it up a year ago or less. So, you'll hear me jump around. But anyway, now that I've given you ample time to read this, he's gone. Just kidding. If you need a reference, I still have the nice big oversized foil from the pre-con whenever I bought this. Oh my god, how many years ago was that? Yeah, I'm getting a little too old. I think that was 8 years ago. Yep, 2011. Written right on the bottom of the card, just had to check. Before I get too far into this, though, I do want to mention that looking at both of his abilities here, there is the copy instants and sorceries, and then there's the copy creatures. I don't really care for his builds that center around the copy the creatures. It does get used in this build that I have, but I don't like it, so really this is Riku of the two Reflections Spellslinger deck. So, take whatever I say about some creatures in here with a grain of salt, or understand why I don't have that many creatures in here because of that. But also, maybe you're playing another Spellslinger deck that's similar or the same colors. Some of these will help you in there too, because a lot of this stuff is just quality of life, win cons, etc. But anyway, I'm done talking about the useless stuff like that. Let's get into it. First up, we need to cover some mana ramp. A deck like this is going to want some big spells, and it's going to want to throw not only a lot of them down, it's going to want to be able to copy them as many times as possible. So for that, I wanted to kind of showcase Animist's Awakening. First off, this card's great. Middle of the game, it's not, even earlier in the game, it's not uncommon to see this X equals 7, X equals 8, and then copied. And then the Spell Mastery just makes it so you stay right on your feet right after casting it. It's a great card. I think it's a great addition to this deck. And quite frankly, I'm going to start demoing it in some of my other green decks just to see if I can get them to hit the ground running a little better. Right, second up, Boundless Realms. Like I said, I want as much mana as I can, and how am I going to get it but by searching for it? 7 mana to pretty much double my lands in terms of, double the lands, but I get to look for that many basics. 9 mana, I get to quadruple? Okay, well that's awesome, because I have nothing against playing a lot of basic lands in a deck, especially since the colors are pretty easy to work with how I have it built, so this has never been a problem for me. And when I could quadruple my stuff, let's say turn 8, I'm probably out of basics. I might have missed 1 or 2 land off this, but even so, going from 8-9 lands all the way to about 30 is about the max that I hit, with how many basics I have. But that's just straight up value. Great card, absolutely helps you get rolling. But speaking of other cards that are just great value, we have Ral, Storm Conduit from War of the Spark. Now, I don't really care too much for his whenever you cast or copy his spell effect. It's cool, but where you have big life totals and everything, I've actually found pinging to be kind of a really good way of putting a target on your head. While some people will go, oh, I have 40 life, oh no, what's 1 damage? Well, that's really cool and all, but in the play group I play with most, they see, oh, okay, you're trying to sneak a damage in here and there, so that'll just kind of get you killed. So, not a huge fan, not against it, but not a huge fan of that ability. However, that Scry, great value, and his negative. It choreographs that you're going to play something big and want it to get copied, but one, that makes it harder. I don't know why I try to stick my thumbs up to count, what's going on, especially when it's so off screen, but one, you're going to counter, or you're going to copy whatever you're casting, so it makes it that much harder to counter, because now they have to counter 2 of them, and 2, even if there are no counters around, you're just doubling up on value. So I think he's great. He doesn't draw too much of a target unless you get a little too aggressive with some of this. So I would absolutely recommend him, especially because, if I remember correctly, he's barely $1. Alright, next up, Sigil Tracer. This is going to be the first thing that I'm going to mention that helps both of Riku's effects here. Because 1, it is a creature, so it is copyable. 2, tap 2 untapped wizards to copy an instant or sorcery. Well, 1, that's a wizard, Riku's. If you can focus, there we are. Riku's also a wizard, so that helps. But let's say you have a couple more wizards on the field, you throw a copy of this down. 1, that's good board state. 2, like I said, other wizards on the field are going to let you copy more just by tapping them with this guy. Lots of value there. Alright, next up, I have Arjun, the Shifting Flame. I think he's like $1 rare from this deck. It's been a while since I've checked the value on him just because he's kind of here. But a deck like this really likes to see a lot of cards. I don't want to call it a combo deck, though I will admit that I do have an infinite combo. Just kind of if the game takes too long, I'm going to end it because it's not that fun if the game drags on too long and everybody kind of starts to get bored and antsy. Anyway, going a little off tangent there, getting back to Arjun. Whenever you cast a spell, you Teferi's Library, or was it Teferi's Puzzle Box? Either way, you Teferi something. You have the really cool Planeswalker guy helping you out with that effect. Really great, lets you see lots of cards. Obviously, he's legendary, so you can't copy him, but I mean, he's a good body, and he has a good effect for what the deck does. Alright, Jace's Sanctum's kind of just a quality of life card. I feel 4 mana to make your instants and sorceries a little cheaper is a heck of a value. Even if it's only by 1, I still prefer that to cards like, what is it, Arcane Melee, where it decreases them by 2, but it does it for everybody. Sure, this is a little more selective, but that Scry ends up paying off entirely too well, just because scrying 1 per spell when you're casting 5 a turn ends up adding up really quick. Love this card. Next up, Thousand Year Storm. It kind of has a Aetherflux Reservoir-esque effect, but instead of gaining life, it's for copying instants and sorceries. It's... holy crap, it's amazing. It's straight value. Even if you only get 1 turn, maybe 2 with this thing out before somebody blows it up, you're going to have loads of fun with it. It absolutely makes the deck run a million times better when it's out. It's loads of fun. Alright, and this deck has green in it, so I'm sure everybody saw Seedborn Muse coming. But I am also in blue, so I want to have mana open on other people's turns. And this is a great way to still be able to advance my board state, kind of set myself up, and then get everybody, you know, all worried because, hey, the blue player's got all these untapped lands. Which feeds into a couple cards that I will be showcasing in just a minute. But moving past that, we have Diluvian Primordial. I feel like ever since this guy came out, he's been an EDH staple. Gets better with more opponents, but there's nothing wrong with this. First off, another card kind of like the Sigil Tracer that has dual synergy. 1, he's not legendary, so Riku. There we are. Riku will let us copy him when he comes in, but also any spell that he picks to cast. Oh, hey, look what Riku does. Man, that's really cool. I've had this guy single-handedly either win games or literally put me within a turn of winning just because of the value you can get out of him. Alright, moving on to the next card, Beacon of Tomorrows. This is a little pricier than a lot of other cards for what it does. So I actually think the cost on this is fairly low. I checked a couple weeks ago. I don't remember what the normal one was. I remember the only reason that this was so big was it's a freaking 5th Dawn foil. But it's an extra turn card, and then you shuffle it in. Yeah, copy that. Take a couple extra turns. Even if that, you know, some of those extra turns only mean I'm drawing a card and then waiting for the next turn, it doesn't matter. Still putting you way ahead, still putting you in a better position, still great to do. And since I already previewed this, I'm going to move right on into Increasing Vengeance. Yeah, 2 solid red, copy target instant or sorcery. Honestly, that's not the coolest part about it. The best part's the flashback. When you flash it back, you get to copy twice. Oh yeah, my fingers actually made it on the camera, sort of. That's really why it's great. Yeah, I'll absolutely throw this out early game for something stupid like, oh, I'm going to cultivate and then I'm going to copy it. It doesn't matter, because what really matters is having it in the graveyard to me. Yeah, I'm not going to absolutely throw it away. I'm not going to whiff it on something that doesn't matter one bit. But more so what I'm trying to get at is I don't mind getting this in the graveyard a little early because I'd rather it be a little early than a little late. Next up, Red Replication. This is pretty much one of the finishers of the deck. Because, sure, it's 9 mana to get 5 token copies of something into play, but oh wait, you can copy it with Riku. And oh wait, you have a couple other, permanents and spells in the deck that copy these spells. This is instant board state and sometimes instant win condition. Great card. Moving on to another almost instant win con, Genesis Wave. Every time I play the deck, I try to hold this until a little later in the game, just because the more X, the better. And not only the more X, the better, the more times you can do this, the better. So copying it 2, maybe even 3 times for right around 11, 12 mana, which I have done fairly consistently with this deck. Sure, it's later in the game at that point, but it just feels so good when you just grab a big chunk of your deck and just flip it down and be just like, look at everything that's in play. Yeah, it does put your instants and sorceries into the graveyard, which does kind of stink, but, well, we're in green and red, and even blue has a good number of ways to get it back. Whatever you choose to get your value lost back into either your deck or your hand, that's up to you, but Gen Wave, absolute winner. And Enter the Infinite. This is getting into the I'm winning this turn level. It's 12 mana. So yeah, holy crap, you better have been doing some ramping. And you better have some mana left over, because you're probably going to have to counter a couple things. But you get your entire deck in your hand to choose something to put back on top, and with cards like the Zeniths, Beacon of Tomorrows, just things that can shuffle back in, you have a very low chance of running out of a library at that point, as long as you can just keep casting them for 0 just to make them go back on top, or rather get shuffled in. But great card, really sets you up for glory. Next up, I wanted to cover World Gorger Dragon. He's one of the 2 ways I have of enabling infinite mana. Everybody knows Palancron. Everybody knows how he sets up stupid combo decks like this. World Gorger is the more obscure one because, well, get him a little closer here so you can read really easily. Comes into play, remove all other permanents you control from the game. What? But when he leaves, you can return them to play. Okay. Yeah, it looks really weird when you first read it, and for most decks it is. But hey, remember that ability I said I didn't really use too much here? Now, I could absolutely try to horribly describe the interaction and the exact order that you want to stack these abilities in to make it happen. But long story short, you copy it, tap all your mana down, stuff happens. I will put a link in the description to a thread I actually found before describing exactly how it works out, because I will never be able to do it justice by even trying to think about it. So that is World Gorger Dragon. Omniscience. For those of you that know the card, you already know why it's in here. It's great. I like casting spells, but maybe I'm running low on mana. Well, guess what? Now all I need to use my mana for is to copy stuff and for X costs. Great card. Pretty great in any blue deck that can hit the 10 mana that it costs. Right. Vidalcan Ori is not a cheap card. Last I checked, it's sitting right around 20, 25. But being able to just, on your turn, have all this mana open, or be able to set yourself up for next turn. Mana ramping on opponents' turns is fun, so giving anything flash is great. But I do have 2 budget alternatives. I have one in here as a backup, as a matter of fact. But the first budget alternative is Hypersonic Dragon. It gives sorceries flash, so that does help, and I think he's all of like $1 rare. The other backup, however, is Alchemist's Refuge. Well, just straight up gives them flash for a turn. Okay, that's cool. And if you pair it with cards like Seedborn Muse, where everything's getting untapped, you really aren't bound to having to do anything on your turn. Next up, Bribery. Cool. Again, dual synergy with Riku, because I can either, whatever creature I find out, I can copy if it's good enough, or if it's a legendary, maybe I can't, but whatever. But also, I can copy the crap out of Bribery, so I can search everybody's deck, somebody's deck 2 or 3 times. It's absolutely great, sets you up. Now this is a higher cost card. This is the cheapest print because nobody seems to like these white borders. But another card that, while it isn't exactly the same, it does accomplish a similar purpose, and is my budget pick for this, is Knowledge Exploitation. Take whatever I said about that, but for spells, I can copy this to look at multiple people's decks. I can copy the crap out of whatever I find from their decks. It costs a little more, but it actually fits the deck and the spell slinger thing a heck of a lot better. The bribery's honestly in there just for instant board state and getting closer to finishers. Alright. Then last up, these two, I can't find a good budget card for this. I mean, Cyclonic Rift, there's a reason it's expensive. It needs reprinted, so it'll go down to a reasonable price, but it's a blue staple. 7 mana, everybody but you loses all their non-land permanents. Great card. Boseiju is the final card I wanted to showcase with this deck. Like I said, you want to be casting a lot of spells. Sure, you can probably lure out a counter here and there, but, well, this is great. Make your spell uncounterable, and then you can worry about copying it if they look like they were going to want to counter it. Like, hey, Genesis Wave, well, they looked like they wanted to counter something, so screw it, I'll just make this X equals 15 instead of X equals 13, and yeah, I'll absolutely make it so that it can't be countered. So it's not necessarily losing value at that point, it's just kind of protecting what value you already have. But that is all I have for you today, folks. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know below. If you have any suggestions for what I could add to the deck, or what other types of decks I can showcase in the future, also let me know. But thank you for joining me today. Andrew, out.